Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to VUX World, the Voice User Experience and Strategy podcast. Before we get into this show today, one really quick announcement. VUX World is part now of the Voice First FM network. If you've heard the first 4 episodes, then you won't have heard me say that because I'd already recorded the first 4 episodes by the time this had all happened. But it is part of the Voice First FM network, and if you are involved in the voice area, the voice industry, the voice scene, and you haven't heard of Voice First FM yet, first of all, where have you been? And second of all, do check it out because there are some really, really interesting podcasts in there. There is the Alexa podcast, which is super interesting. Every single week they have This Week in Voice, which is Bradley Metrock, the founder of the podcast. He gets somebody on there from within the industry. They discuss the news and what's been going on. There's a voice of healthcare. There is all kinds of interesting podcasts, and I am super excited to be part of it and to have Voice User Experience World be under that umbrella. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, I am super excited to have today's guest. He is one of the people who I think is really shaping the voice world at the moment, and the company that he has co-founded is really making some incredible strides in the voice space. He is called Jan König, and the company is Jovo. If you are a developer, you probably already come across Jovo. You may well be using Jovo. If you are wanting to get into the voice space and you want to learn more about it, then you are going to want to literally pay close attention to every one of Jan's words. Now, without further ado, here is Jan. Jan, hello.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks a lot for the warm words.
You're more than welcome. So, Jan, you are the co-founder of Jovo Tech. Do you want to tell those people who are listening who don't know what Jovo is a little bit about what Jovo is?
Sure. Yeah. So thanks a lot for having me. I'm Jan. I'm one of 2 founders of Jovo, and Jovo is the first voice apps that work on both Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. We were a part of BetaWorks Voice Camp in 2017, and from April through the end of June, it was an 11-week accelerator program. And while we were part of this, we discovered that a lot of people face this huge pain that they have to develop for both platforms. They have to maintain different kinds of code bases, and this is when we decided that there needs to be an open source solution that lets developers just build once and then deploy on different platforms. And this is what we're building with Jovo.
Cool. So how did you get to the point of Jovo? What's your kind of background and your career, and what's led you to co-founding Jovo?
So my co-founder, Alex, and I, we started working together about 3.5 years ago, I think. So we started working on different projects together. And our last project, which was in the social media space, led us to developing different Facebook Messenger chatbots, Alexa skills, stuff like that, because we're thinking a lot about how to bring content that's in social media into different channels where the users are. And while we were developing and experimenting with Alexa skills, we discovered there's not a lot of tools available to make that easier, the development part of it. And also, and that's if we take one step further from the framework to what our vision is, what we learned is it's very difficult right now to build something on voice which is beyond the isolated experience of just being an Alexa skill. So what we wanted to have, for example, is to have an Alexa skill, but then send further information to the phone when we're on the go and stuff like that. So for these multi-modal experiences, we thought, okay, there needs to be a solution, and this is what we use to apply to BetaWorks Voice Camp with, and start working on different prototypes for these multimodal experiences on multiple devices and platforms. And while working on this, we realized how early this space is, and that we need to to get started by targeting one specific problem, which is cross-platform voice app development, and then later adding more and more platforms and devices with the multimodal API. And that's where we are right now. We launched the Jovo framework officially in September. It has been open sourced for a few months, and launching version 1 of the framework, a big step and a big milestone for us in the next few days.
Mm-hmm. So what will over the next few days, what is some of the kind of main either enhancements or developments on the framework, or is that all a surprise?
No, it isn't. We've actually been testing it with people in our community for the last few weeks, and it was also our main requested feature. And so if you, I don't know how in depth you've been going into the voice app development part in your podcast and previous episodes, but voice app development right now has like 2 main elements, or actually 3 main elements. It's the voice device, the smart speaker on that side, and then the voice platform in the middle as a middle layer, and the actual voice app's code on the other side. And when a person is talking to the voice device, this is then sending the information to the voice API where the voice app's language model is sitting. So every developer has to have both code of the app and the language model. So when I'm saying I want to order, tell this and that app to order a pizza, previously, I, as a developer, should have trained my language model to understand what that means, ordering a pizza, with a pizza order intent, for example, or just an order intent. And this order intent is then pushed to the application's code. So until today, Jovo is just supporting the code side. So people only had to use one code base, only had to learn one domain-specific language for how voice app development works. But a lot of people told us that having to maintain different language models on both Alexa and Dialogflow, which is the natural language understanding tool owned by Google, that this is also a pain to have 2 different language models. When you're updating them, you have to change it in both platforms. And so what we're launching with version 1 is a new consolidated language model, which people just maintain locally in a JSON file. And then we're offering command line tools that transform this JSON file into either an Alexa language model or in a Dialogflow language agent, and that lets people deploy this to the different platforms. So it's another step of helping people to save time and focus on the more important work, which is building the language model, designing the language model, and also building the logic, and not focusing on doing repetitive work.
That sounds quite a task, that, and I imagine that will save a hell of a lot of time, because it's the kind of vision for Jovo seems to be to simplify and sort of standardize some of those potentially quite laborious tasks that developers would have to do for all of these different platforms. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. This is and also now. So I think what's even more interesting for us is now that people already have the language model in a local file, we can also use this language model to create automated tests, for example, does this intent work and stuff like that. And things like this are now made possible by maintaining the language model in a local file with the Jovo framework. But this is just how we're trying to expand our offerings from just the code development to also the language model development. Language model testing will be added later as well. All of these things are how we're trying to expand horizontally.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the kind of bigger vision is for this kind of multi-modal application where, so correct me if I'm wrong, but multi-modal is where you might say something in voice but get something returned that's not voice, like a video or an image, or use a different device to, let's say, for example, if you call Alexa, you might get the response sent through to your phone or something like that. Is that the right definition of multi-modal, or would you be able to kind of give a better one than that?
So there's many different definitions of multimodal. I'm actually writing my master's thesis about that topic right now, and there is no real definition of multimodal, and that's a problem. And I'm interviewing experts in the field, and everyone has a different definition. But what's like the academic view on that is that multimodal can be both in parallel or sequential. So send something to my phone so I can read it later, or like that's sequential, like what we previously called a continuous experience. I'm at home and I want to know if my train's leaving at the right time. So I'm just asking my smart speaker, and the smart speaker sending me a push notification while I'm leaving the house, for example. So stuff like that. Or I'm speaking to a smart speaker, but then want to continue the conversation later when I'm on that train. And of course, I don't want to like talk while I'm sitting, like at least not now. People aren't used to that by now. But it's and then I want to just type the answer. And Google Assistant is doing this extremely well. They offer a lot of these continuous experience features now. When we got to Voice Camp, they didn't have this, and the Echo Show wasn't there yet. So this is why we still believe it's important to be cross-platform and to offer these multimodal features like across different assistants. So there's still a need for that, we believe. But we thought, okay, let's wait a little bit what the big platforms are doing. And so this is the continuous one, and then also multimodal is if you remember Minority Report, Tom Cruise being in front of a gigantic machine, like using his hands and his voice and everything, seeing stuff, hearing stuff. So this is like the parallel multimodal part. But academic research thinks that most people right now prefer like the sequential use of multimodal. Like people don't need to use gestures with voice and stuff like that. I believe this will become more important later with AR, and mixed reality. People won't like click inside like an AR or a mixed reality world, and so I think this will become more important there as well. So yeah, that's the bigger vision, which we're currently building small scale prototypes for to test out different multimodal features. But our main focus right now is the framework as a basis for like voice app development as our main layer, and we will later then adding more features as on top of that.
Cool. So what do you, I mean, I can imagine that the whole multimodal thing would be quite a challenge as it is. What do you think is the kind of biggest challenge to reaching that multimodal kind of experience?
So the main challenge right now is, and Amazon might be working on solving that, is account linking. So right now it's pretty difficult for people like in the current ecosystem to build a multimodal experience, because it's like super unnatural how account linking works today. Like people have to go into the Alexa app. The app doesn't work that well, and you have to put in username and password. And username and password aren't like built for a voice world. So what we built was what we called seamless account linking. So people, like we generated voice pins, and this was a year ago, so it's really like not that new anymore. People have been doing this now for quite some time, but like a voice pin, which you could use to do like account linking in the back end and not through username and password and stuff like that. Google has an advantage there because they already have their ecosystem with just a Google account. You already, like I have a Pixel phone now, which is like perfect. I'm now talking to my phone a lot, but just like because I can just squeeze it. Does it work? Yeah. Oh, sorry. So like Google Assistant just like flashes up when I'm using that. And I also have smart earbuds now. So when I'm on the bike, I wear one, and then I can just like click it twice and then tell Google Assistant to bring me home by bike, for example, and it then acts as a like navigation. Like I think stuff like that will become increasingly important. And I think the main challenge for us when we started working on multimodal solutions is that all these different platforms are currently trying to build walled gardens, and they don't want you to build like a bridge between these walled gardens. So we believe that the market still needs to mature a little bit, and people need to get used to connecting different devices. Amazon is working on Bluetooth with their gadgets API, for example, to use Bluetooth to connect and not like try to use just username and password and everything. So I believe that we will see a lot of different things happening in the future. And I mean, even if it's just sequential use, but not really multimodal. So I'm at home listening to a podcast, and then I'm walking into my car, and then I can just like tell the voice assistant in the car to continue listening to that podcast. I mean, even that is a very seamless experience. It's not like technically multimodal, but it's still, I believe, to like bring voice outside the home is a first great step to a multimodal experience later.
So the whole kind of walled garden concept, there's been a lot of stuff kicking around in the last few months, which obviously you'll be aware of, and things like Google taking YouTube off the Echo Show and stuff like that. And there's obviously going to be some quite intense sort of rivalry between Google and Amazon in this kind of space. What have they kind of, or have you had any feedback from the two companies on Jovo? Because presumably you're obviously trying to do exactly that, aren't you? You're trying to kind of have one simple way of using both platforms. Have you had any sort of feedback from them on that aim?
At the beginning, of course, like when we just had 10 stars on GitHub and we were showing it to them, I mean, the evangelists, they told us, like, from a developer perspective, that this is great. I mean, but they were hesitant of like really promoting us. But now that we have more users, that we have a community, we have like a lot of skills published with the framework, that's like people are now realizing that our main benefit is not only like cross-platform development, but also simplifying the development part of it. So with our framework, people can also host their Google Actions on AWS Lambda, for example, which is like good for Amazon as well. So stuff like this, we're just trying to like break down the barriers a little bit and like doing that. And now that people realize that it's not about cross-platform, but it's about simplifying the development experience, I believe that they think this is going into a good direction. But still, like we're still not we're still not on the list of Amazon like recommended tools or something, which we understand, and but that's fine for us. Like we still like we see ourselves as a community of voice app developers, and we think it's important to have like a neutral, like to be neutral, like in between these different platforms, and so we don't really like we're working with both platforms, and we think they're all both going to a great direction. But it's for us it's good that we are not like too close to both ecosystems.
Yeah, you can then kind of remain entirely objective about everything then, can't you?
Yeah, and they also like that, like we have a lot of great feedback for them as well, just because we have many developers working on both ecosystems, and they give us like great feedback on, hey, why does that not work on Dialogflow and stuff like that. So
cool. You mentioned the kind of community of developers. I've kind of seen over the past few sort of days when I've been kind of looking at things on Jovo, that it is actually quite an active and fruitful kind of group of people, isn't it, who are fairly active in contributing to to the Slack channel and stuff like that. It is fairly active, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the things that motivates me most. So we just really we didn't really think about like community a lot when we started working on this in May. So we were still pretty new to that topic. We've just been like tinkering with voice stuff for a few months, and so we thought, okay, let's just build a framework that makes that easier. Use that as an entry point for multimodal, and like this framework will be finished in 2 months. We thought, and we're like, oh my gosh, and so we just kept improving, and then we learned like that it's really like valuable to have so many different people like working with the framework, working with agencies, with independent developers. They all have like great feedback, and it's really cool to see like how many people are building cool stuff with it. It's still difficult for us to measure how many people are using the framework because it's open source. People can just download it and using it in their code. But we started a Slack channel in December, and we believe, and this is our focus in 2018, is really to grow, like healthily grow the voice developer community with Jovo, because we learned like how valuable this is to have so many different talented people who are really passionate about this. I mean, it's still such an early topic. Many people like don't make any money. Everyone who is working in this space is really in there because they think it's super interesting and they're passionate about it, not because of the money. So I think this is really great to have this as a building block of a community. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to growing the Slack channel, and like welcoming more people to our community and helping them building like great stuff.
Cool. So what is the Slack channel for anyone listening who might want to get involved and see what's going on over there?
So it's on jovo.tech, jovo.tech/Slack.
Cool. Nice and simple. Yeah. You've obviously built that URL for a voice audience, haven't you?
Definitely, yeah.
Nice. So is that where you get kind of most of your, your kind of roadmap for Jovo? Is that where a lot of your kind of feedback and stuff comes from? Or have you got kind of, is it in yours and Alex's brains in terms of where you want things to go and what you want to kind of release next?
A few things. So yes, definitely by talking to our developers, and we have a Slack channel called Feature Requests, for example, and we actively talk to the people there. We also have GitHub issues. So when people ask for, like, when people wish for some stuff, they also sometimes create an issue, or email. We have a live widget as well on the website that people just use to ask us questions. So for us, it was really important to add a lot of feedback channels to learn, because it's open source and we don't have the email addresses from our users. And so, and also what we recently launched is Jovo Studios, as part for our community to also to work on real life projects and also to make some money. Because we learned that there's many brands that are actively looking for specialists in the voice space, because there aren't a lot out there, and they usually brands decide that it's important for them to have it work on both platforms, and then they start working with the Jovo framework, and then they realize, oh my gosh, it's super difficult to build a great voice experience beyond prototyping, and then they usually reach out and ask us if we know anyone. And this is our new experiment, is Jovo Studios, which we call a global network of voice professionals, where we work together with brands to bring in different professionals like vui designers or VUX designers and developers to collaborate on projects together, which we then use as insights for how we can improve our product as well, which is very interesting for us to learn more about. We learned that many voice developers right now are also the voice designers mostly. So it's really just it's really developer driven right now. But there are great VUI designers out there as well. And I believe right now there's a huge gap between design and development. So and so for us, it's really interesting to see how that evolves. What happens if more than one person is working on a voice app project, for example. So this is very interesting to see, and we're just getting started there, but it's an interesting space, definitely.
So have you and Alex, and as part of Jovo, you've kind of built your own voice apps for people outside of Jovo Studios so far?
So we've been calling it Jovo Studios internally for a few months. We really we're a product startup. We're not an agency, so we were really hesitant about doing projects. But then we when companies approached us, we saw the opportunity of just like eating our own dog food and like trying our own tools to polish something. And like if it's a huge brand, there's also the opportunity to test your framework with like tens of thousands of users, which is really cool. And so we like, depending on the project, we thought, okay, that's a good way. But even with our first project, we brought in people from the community just because we don't want to hire like a full like service agency or anything. We just want to like stay like a product company with a strong community around it, and like bring in the right people for that.
Cool. So I'm always kind of interested in the different kinds of people that make up teams that end up doing stuff. And you mentioned there that there's a lot of the kind of voice apps being driven predominantly by developers. In your experience of building these voice apps, what kind of mixture of skills do you think works well in a team to create a good, really good voice experience?
So I briefly talked about this in the blog post where we explain a little bit like how Jovo Studios work. So for us, it's important to have. So the problem is, for brands, it's very difficult on Alexa, for example, to like keep their own voice, just because you're like it's a little confusing. On Google Assistant, for example, it's more like a group chat when you're talking to an app. Like Google Assistant is just like pulling in another member to the conversation, and then you're talking to that member. But on Alexa, you keep talking to Alexa, and so it's very difficult for a brand to like distinguish themselves like from the Alexa brand. So it's even more important to have like clear branding, to have a clear communication strategy. So in our opinion, it's really important to work like directly with an expert, like a brand expert who knows the brand, who knows the target group, the target user or customer, and then also a voice designer and a developer. That's like the Venn diagram right now, what we're trying to do. The problem I see currently is that like VUI design and the development, there's a lot of overlap, and there needs to be a lot of overlap, because like you can design great conversations, like that's one thing, but there's so many technical limitations right now that it's extremely important for VUI designers as well to understand the technical capabilities of the platforms and also the differences between the platforms. And so all these things make it a little difficult right now, and we're currently thinking about when and how are we bringing in different people, and how can we support that with different tools. It even starts with like a lot of agencies that are used, like creative agencies that are used to like building websites or mobile apps. They're just used for writing like for the eye and not writing for the ear. So they have their copywriters. They're great at writing like content copy for websites, but not so good like because they're just new to it, like for the ear, for voice apps, like stuff like that. That's the small details where it's like extremely important, I think, to build skills for like build these skills for building skills, like build these like, voice skills. So I think that's extremely important, and why many companies, I believe, should also start investing in this space, like not only by working with agencies, but also by building internal teams and testing internally to understand how this space works.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned there that there's the some of the designers may not know the difference necessarily between designing or developing for Google Assistant versus Amazon Alexa. Let's say that I'm a designer and I join your project team to work on a voice experience. What would be the, say, I don't know, maybe it's top 5 things that you would tell me that would mark the difference between Google Assistant and Alexa from a creative or development perspective?
The main differences. So that's a good question, definitely. So five points.
Or more, or well, if you can think of more, or even maybe there might be fewer. I don't know.
So just to clarify for that, so we are a cross-platform development framework, but we also offer platform-specific features. So there's just like people don't have to build once and deploy it everywhere. They can also like build, depending on the platform, different things, and because there are a lot of like platform-specific features. But in my opinion, the number one difference between the two platforms, for example, is how the language models work. So on Alexa can be quite difficult sometimes to, like, when you have large language models. So usually as a voice designer, you like just create the experience without thinking a lot about the language model, just because like it needs to be a good conversation. So you think about, okay, what's the input, what's the output, what can people say, and how should I respond? And we've done this quite some time, quite a lot, and then afterwards, after building it out, realized that this model that results from just this design doesn't work with Alexa, just because Alexa is like randomly mapping like input to the wrong intents. So this is just like when one intent, so you have different sample phrases and utterances in one intent. And if that's too broad, then Alexa just tends to just map everything to that intent. So, okay, that's probably also should go into that intent. And the problem with Alexa there is that after your skill is live and stuff is mapped to the wrong intent, you don't learn anything by it, because Amazon doesn't provide you with the raw text of what people said. And so this is the main problem right now, where we believe it's also very important to test the language model while designing the experience. So to have like to do it in parallel, we're currently thinking about a process, like when should people, like what should the different steps be to test both the design, the language model, and then the code for a voice app development project. So this is number one, where Dialogflow, the NLU engine from Google, works a little better because it provides you with the raw text. It lets you like limit different intents based on the state. So when you are asking a question like, what's your name, or what's your like favorite animal, you can let Dialogflow know that you're expecting actually like an animal like dog or something. But if you on Alexa, it's not doing that. So it's not using the current conversation's context to do the natural language understanding. Like, this is one of the differences. And number two is that there's Amazon is currently still built for the home, so it's a different context. Amazon is great as a smart speaker. They like when we're thinking about like people are waking up in the morning, making them ready, and then also arriving at home and coming home in the evenings, like family around the table, like talking to the device, sitting on the couch, stuff like that. So these like laid back, informal experiences are interesting for Alexa devices, but Alexa isn't that great, in my opinion, in between that, like when people are actually leaving the house. So I think this context is important to consider when developing a voice app for Alexa. Google Assistant is a little different. So I'm not using Google Home a lot at home. And there's actually some Wi-Fi issues. So like, I don't know if you've seen that, but Google Home has this bug where like it just like disconnects all the other devices once it's in the Wi-Fi. And I was trying, and I was like, no, that can't happen. So, but since I have the Pixel 2, so I switched from iPhone to Pixel 2. I'm really like more talking to my phone than like actually using touch. So it's a great like voice is a great layer for this operating system for the phone as well. So I was looking for, options to preferences to lighten up my screen, so to increase the screen brightness, and I didn't find it because it was a new operating system for me. So I was just asking Google Assistant to brighten the screen, and it worked, and stuff like that, or setting a timer and stuff like that. I'm not usually not using the phone features. I'm just asking Google Assistant. So, and I believe, and with my smart earbuds and stuff like that, so I'm really using it more and more on the go. So these are, and I'm actually I've started drafting a blog post about this, voice leaving the home in December. I haven't gotten around doing the finishing touches and everything, but I believe this will become more important and could become really interesting for different use cases, like on-the-go voice experiences could become something interesting once more smart earbuds and stuff like that emerge. So this is number 2. Also Google features. You can type, you can show gallery elements, you can have buttons and stuff like that, which is different on Alexa, where the multi-modal experience is actually the Echo Show screen, just like that. So there's different layers. And number 3 is what I already mentioned, is on Google Assistant, the voice app is actually for them, it's really important that it is a different brand. You're not talking to Google Assistant anymore. You're talking to this app, which is which Assistant just asked to join the conversation. Someone from Google just explained it to us that it's they see Google Assistant more like a dinner party, where you're talking to someone, and when you ask that person a question and they don't know the answer, they're just oh, my friend up there knows how that works, so let me just call them here. And so this is a distinction compared to Alexa, where it's actually it's a skill. You're not you're teaching Alexa new skills. It's something different. You're still talking to Alexa. And so this is just a distinction that I believe is very important when you're developing that as well.
So just to clarify that, then, does that mean that with Google Assistant, it will kind of hand you off to the most appropriate app or third party that it thinks will solve your problem, as opposed to Alexa, whereas you would need to ask it to invoke a skill of some kind? Is that right?
Yeah. So both platforms are experimenting with stuff like that. I think Google Assistant is a little better right now. It's doing a little better. So this is called implicit invocation. So you don't have to call the invocation name. You can just hey Google, I want to cook a great dinner tonight, and then Google says, oh, hey, I think this and that app could help with that. Yeah, so really that dinner party thing. And Alexa is actually doing stuff like that as well. So I believe also their goal is that you don't have to call app names, because that's not a natural experience. But right now, I think the app needs to be whitelisted for it to work. And on Google Assistant, it's a little different. You can actually define implicit triggers when you're developing the voice app. So that it actually you can you have some control over how you want your app to be discovered in this implicit discovery.
So it sounds as though Google has probably a more well-rounded a platform at the moment. Would that be fair to say? Because you were mentioning there that you're using it on your phone, you're using it in your earbuds, and it's kind of seems a lot more flexible than Alexa.
From a technical point of view, definitely. It's from a developer perspective, it's still way easier to develop for Alexa. Prototyping and stuff like that is easier, but Dialogflow, the NLU engine, is, in my opinion, better on for Google Assistant apps. Definitely, you have more control. You get the raw text and stuff like that, but What people say, though, is that discovery isn't that great right now on Google Assistant. So people rarely use third-party apps. And I've noticed this as well. So I'm rarely using any third-party skills right now. Like I'm sometimes playing I don't know if you know the company Earplay. They were also part of the Voice Camp Accelerator. So I'm sometimes playing it when I'm waiting for the train or something. So that's interesting. But I believe like for stuff like that, implicit discovery isn't there yet. And so like Alexa still has the way larger developer ecosystem and for that, like for voice apps to be used on a daily basis.
Yeah. So what you were talking there that the NLU from Google Dialogflow is a lot better than Alexa. How do you then go about tests? So before you kind of launch a skill for Alexa, how would you test to make sure that all of those kind of things like invocations and stuff like that are actually doing the things that they should be? If you don't have access to the text that people are actually speaking into it, what other tools are available to do that testing for Alexa?
So there's Bespoken is a good tool for testing. We also have a Bespoken integration as bespoken.io. They're also working on some automated testing. And what I'm currently doing, and this is a pain definitely, is just manual testing. And what we're building right now, it won't be part of version 1.0, but probably version 1.1 or 1.2 is language model testing, which so right now when you want to test your voice apps with Jovo, you can just like run a local server. You don't have to upload your code to AWS Lambda all the time. So you just run a local server and then you see it in the logs. It's like a good way for local debugging. And what we're going to add is a debugging mode for the language model. So you can just say like in your command line, Jovo run, and then like, I don't know, language model mode, or like haven't figured that out yet. And then it would just log the intent that was understood. And by just like you can faster talk to it. It's still a manual process. So we need to figure out a way to like record what the person is saying and then like putting that into an automated test, but I think it's a good first step. Right now, it's a very manual process to test a language model because you really have to test it by talking to it. And we are making this a little easier with a like language model testing mode where you don't have to go through like your whole voice app's logic. You're just like talking to it and it uses the language model that you have and just returns to the like if it matched it to the right intent. So it's like we're really only a little step towards like easier testing of that. But in the future, hopefully we can add an automated way or work with Bespoken to do something like that. But that's like right now, when developing a little more complex apps, that's sometimes like the most frustrating thing is to debug the language model, because it suddenly starts, like it really suddenly starts to map intents and slots to the wrong intents and slots and stuff like that, and then you have to go into the code again. And so this is definitely an important step to think about solutions to make that easier as well.
So I just wanted to see, let's say, for example, if there is somebody listening to this who is a developer, doesn't use Jovo, hasn't developed a voice experience just yet, but is looking to get involved, how would they go about kind of getting up and running with Jovo, and what sort of languages would they need to be familiar with to develop within the framework?
So for us, it's important to make it as easy as possible to get started. We have a subpage on our website, which is called jovo.tech/learn, where we have different courses. It's not a lot of courses, but it's like step-by-step guides that help people understand like the basic principles of voice app development and how to use our framework. On our website, on the first page, we also have a we will have after the V1 launch. So probably will be ready once you publish this episode. A getting started with Jovo in 5 simple steps guide that will show people how to install it, download the sample app, deploy the language model, and run the local web server, and then just test it. So that should be by then a very streamlined process. About the framework, it's Node.js. It's similar to the Alexa Skills Kit or the Actions on Google SDK, which both are in Node.js as well. And if you're used to building stuff with the Alexa SDK, Jovo is like more similar to this one compared to the Actions on Google SDK. So we try to cherry pick the best of both worlds a little bit, but also like most people are used to Alexa skill development right now, so we wanted to make the transition easier for them. And so it's really, we have a lot of beginner developers in our community as well, because voice is a great platform to start tinkering and developing, because it's easy to do prototypes and to learn by doing. So I would encourage everyone, even if they see themselves like not as developers, but vui designers, to build their own voice apps, at least for like testing and prototyping purposes, to learn more about how the language models work, how like the routing works, how different states work and stuff like that. It's really like, I'm not a developer as well. I've been like learning more about it. I've published several skills, but I haven't started out as a developer, and I could still understand the principles and everything. So in my opinion, anyone could learn that. It's an exciting field. It's good stuff to like learn more step by step. And so yeah, let's get started.
Cool, let's do it. What advice would you give to someone who is just getting started in the kind of voice space?
So what helped me a lot, and I'm also, I mean, we just started out a year ago, and we were completely new to this topic as well. We had a little experience with like Facebook Messenger chatbots and stuff like that, but we were also still new. And what helped me a lot was like follow a lot of people in this space on Twitter, like be part of all those different Slack channels. The Alexa Slack is very active, has like 1,700 members, and like join the Jovo chat Slack and just try it out with a very simple voice app, and try to go from prototyping. Like prototyping is easy, but try to go from like idea to publishing a voice app as fast as possible. That's probably it. We have like, again, we try to improve our docs every day, publish more content, tutorials on our blog, and also courses. We're soon doing video courses as well. So if you want to learn more about this, happy to help as well in our Slack channel.
Cool. You were mentioning about the so you mentioned about Jovo Studios and a community of people who you're looking to put together there. And I know one of the things that you were wanting to talk about was about how VUI designers and developers can better communicate to see whether we can create kind of tools and have a more of a collaboration within the community. Obviously, it sounds like the Jovo kind of Slack channel is really helping in that respect. Is there kind of any other sort of areas where people within the industry can collaborate, and what kind of tools were you kind of thinking about in that respect?
So there are some great tools out there where people can design and prototype voice apps. And so, for example, there is SaySpring from New York. We have Storyline and Smartly, and there's also some others out there that are in a private beta right now. And there's different kinds of tools. So SafeSpring is currently only focused on the development part, like on the design part. So they're really a design tool. And they're thinking about, okay, how does a developer handoff look like later, while Storyline and Smartly also allow you to actually publish the apps that you designed on the platform. So what we're doing, we're sometimes using like all of them to prototype stuff, just because we learned it's like they all have their different advantages. But what is really like, there's currently a gap between, okay, I finished my prototype on either SafeSpring or Storyline or Smartly, but now I want to like develop it with like a certain development framework. Right now, there's like people, like designers, create flowcharts, and then developers use these flowcharts to develop the voice app. And so there's still like a gap. It's still undefined how a developer handoff should look like. And I even believe like this term developer handoff isn't applicable really for voice app development, because it's important to have the developer like involved in the process earlier, to have a clear feedback process between design and development, because like as I mentioned, like the language model parts and parts that are like technical limitations between the different platforms. So I believe that it's important to have a collaborative process between development and design, where maybe in mobile app development and website development, it was a little different, because you could clearly like see if it's possible to like build this app that a designer designed. At least like, I don't know, for the simple things. But that's just one thing. We're still at the beginning of figuring out how to do that, like how to bridge the gap from the flowchart to a fully designed flow. But that's just like one of the things we're currently thinking about that could be very exciting in the future if anyone like solves this problem.
Cool. So what's coming up then in 2018 for yourself, Jan, and for Jovo? What's the aims for 2018? What you're up to and what you're working on?
So our main focus was very afterwards, like we will take a deep breath and like define our roadmap. We have a few ideas. I mentioned a few of the things like language model testing, maybe automated testing, and also like helping like bridge the gap between design and development. So it's still like the goal for us is to emerge the Jovo framework into a platform that like helps in the whole process. This is still like extremely like undefined. We're not like talking about this a lot right now, just because it's like still a thought in our heads. Our main focus is still growing the community, and for this, we're currently in the process of planning a conference in Berlin for about voice. So we're about voice and multi-modal actually. So we're still we announced it last year, and we're still like looking for the right date and the right location. But it might still be in spring 2018 probably. So it might still be in spring. So we're currently figuring this out, and also are looking for partners to help us with that. So it won't be a Jovo conference. It will be a community-driven voice conference, just because we don't want to do just a Jovo show up there. We want to put the community together and increase the reach of the voice space in general. And so this is what we're also working on. And then, of course, always talking to our users and thinking about what could the next steps be to make the experience even better for them.
Fantastic. Wicked. It sounds like you're going to be busy.
Also, of course, for me to finish my master's thesis finally. I have a deadline there, end of April. So this is also like it's going to be a little stressful, though.
Yeah.
At least the thesis part to finally like sit down and do that.
It's an intense process, and any kind of long assignment like that is an incredibly intense process, isn't it? Cool. So where can people get in touch with you? What I'll do is I'll put the links to the website and the framework and all that kind of stuff in the show notes. Where could people get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out to you or see what you're up to and follow you online?
Sure. Always, of course, happy to have people join the Slack community. Feel free to send a direct message there as well if you have any questions. And also, you can reach me at jan@jovo.tech or the whole team at team@jovo.tech. And I'm on Twitter at ein König, which is German. It's EINKOENIG. And also Jovo is on Twitter at Jovo Tech, just one word.
Cool. Fantastic. Nice one. That was Jan from Jovo. That was an interesting conversation. That it sounds as though Jovo's mission and vision for to be able to enable simplistic multimodal experiences is something that will provide tremendous value to people if they can overcome the challenges that come with that Jan has spoke about just there. If you haven't tried Jovo out yet, do give it a go. If you're looking to get into the voice space and you're looking to craft your voice skills, as Jan said, give it a go. The sooner you learn about it, the sooner you'll be being able to develop some decent voice experiences. And if you're a developer and you're already developing for Alexa and you're using some other tools, it's worth giving Jovo a try and see what it is, see what it's all about. I mean, it does certainly make sense to have one code base, one code repository, and to be able to then publish that to the two major players really in the voice space at the moment, Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa. So thank you, Jan, for taking the time to speak to us. Really interesting episode. I'll put all of the contact details for Jan and the links to the Slack channel and all that stuff in the show notes, and I hope you did enjoy that. I certainly did. And as always, I'll see you next time.